Hey everybody, and welcome back to What the Movie. I am now your host, Evan Magid. I'm replacing for Abel Stoika, respectively, and to the left of me is...
Thomas.
All right, and to the right of me is...
Kimani.
All right, awesome. So today we're going to be talking about 4 topics in particular. Some of them are going to be fun, a little bit more short, and then the final one will be the big old movie discussion that we usually do. So the first one, I will give credit mostly to Kimani. It's going to be for the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem trailer. And honestly, I'm going to let you start off before we get to this little discussion real quick.
Yeah, I had the most to say about it because I think it looks really good and really fun. I really like the art style. Obviously, it's kind of derivative of stuff that's been coming out in recent years. I'm not going to name names. We all know. But overall, I think it has a really textured look. I love the designs of the turtles. I think it's fun that they're actual, 13, 14-year-olds now.
Yeah.
I think that's, for some reason, that's like a new twist that's never been done before. Yeah, no, it overall looks really cute and funny, and I'm looking forward to it.
All right, Thomas, what's up?
I just also agree because it's kind of a wild concept that it's a twist that the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are teenagers.
Yeah.
But I agree with you that it looks great. There was a lot of negative buzz before this happened because people were upset that this happening kind of was thought to be because what got Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles canceled. I don't know how true that is because I feel like just having a movie, you can have a show and a movie running side and side.
Yeah.
But either way, this trailer looks great for all the reasons you said, but also because the cast looks really great as well.
Yeah.
Which I know can be very hit or miss. There's some movies that have a star-studded cast, and it's just really, guys. But
Paycheck.
yeah. But with this, I think that it works because the people who are playing the turtles are, like you said, teenagers, and they're relatively unknown. Personally, the only one who I knew beforehand was Hannibal Buress.
Oh, Hannibal Buress, yeah.
So
from Eric Andre's show.
Yeah. And he's not a teenager. But,
Yeah,
Yeah,
he's also not voicing one of the turtles.
Yeah.
Oh, he isn't?
No.
He's not, no.
I don't know where I got
I think
that
he's actually going to play Splinter. I think we're going to get Unc Splinter,
Oh, really?
which I think...
No, Jackie Chan's playing Splinter.
Oh, Jackie Chan's playing
Yeah,
Splinter?
Jackie-
I
I was
thought
gonna
he had
say-
a fro.
Jackie Chan.
No, it's Jackie Chan.
Jackie Chan's playing Splinter. Nicholas Cantu is in it. Gumball from Amazing World of Gumball, for those of you. Then there's people like John Cena.
Yeah.
Who I've never seen
Bebop and Rocksteady.
in a movie before, which I'm looking forward to.
J-
I don't know if he's ever even done a movie because I've never seen it
He's
personally.
he was
I
in the Suicide Squad.
I
he's
really
basically-
I didn't see him in it.
You cornball.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
So it's terrible
Give me
jokes.
You better.
Get me off this kind of-
But Jackie Chan, Ice Cube, Natasha Dimit. Oh my God, I'm gonna.
Do you not know who that is? You don't have to
Only
name
say
off everybody.
Only say the ones that you know.
yeah.
Okay, Giancarlo Esposito. Really looking forward to that.
Yeah, there's one. I'm
and
going to talk about him in a little bit. That's where I'm going to transition
yeah.
a little bit. So with Giancarlo Esposito, the reason why that in particular, and I'll talk about the Turtles in a little bit, but I feel like with the Giancarlo Esposito's casting as Baxter Stockman, here's what I'll say about it. I'm very glad that they chose him because when I watched Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and they casted Tyler Perry as Baxter Stockman, I felt some type of way about that culturally. And I was like, okay, you gave him buck teeth. He didn't look like that, but okay. And plus they had a little fly Easter egg on his shirt and whatever. But, now that it's animated and now that we have actual teenagers doing it, which, yeah, the fact that it's a twist is kind of comedic in itself. And the fact that there are actual people who have done voice work before, you have Gumball, but you also have Brandy Noon, who was in Good Boys, which was an R-rated comedy made by Seth Rogen, which is why he carried over. And also Paul Rudd being in there, and April O'Neil being voiced by one of the actresses from The Bear. And I feel like this cast is there because Seth Rogen is very creative. Anytime he does animation like Invincible or something like that, or Chip and Dale, which he was a producer in that, he does something wild, and even to reference Chip and Dale, he's the reason why Uncle Ugly Sonic was in that movie.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, come on. It's like, what production company would even think about having something like that? And I feel like when I saw the trailer and I saw the style, I know most people would say like the Spider-Verse style, and I don't think it's a trend. I think we talked about it earlier. Like, it wasn't really a trend, but it kind of shows that animated movies can be whatever they want. They can have this very man-made style. And I feel like there's a lot to it that adds to, number one, the kind of like 70s, 80s look to it, because that was always the tone of it, even in the original ones with like the people in the suits, and they were kind of like talking
Jim
like that.
Henson actually did those suits. I didn't know that.
Exactly.
Yeah, I didn't know
Yeah,
that.
so
That
like
was
it
common
seems like
knowledge,
they're
but-
going back to their source material, but not like the original source material where it was like
Yeah.
R-rated.
Killing people.
Yeah, I'm like, I know the comic books do one thing, but like
It feels very
faithful.
faithful is the point.
Yeah, like
It's very of
To the
the
spirit,
essence.
yeah.
Yeah, like I guess. Do you guys want to say one more thing? I'll say one last thing, and then I'll transition real quick.
I think that what you were saying about the trend, about like the trend, quote unquote, of
Yeah.
the Spider-Verse style of like I know Kimani said you weren't going to name names, but whatever. It's out there. But
Yes.
the Spider-Verse and like Puss in Boots and Mitchell's versus the Machines, which I
I haven't seen that.
I adored Mitchell's versus the Machines. It was great.
Someone watch this.
But like it's not really a trend because we've only gotten like 3 or 4 total out of it, and I
I think at
that
that point you can consider
you
it
can
a trend.
consider it a trend, but like over like 5 years,
True.
and
Yeah.
and I think it's,
Sony Animation does it too.
yeah, I think that it's good that we're getting more into that because honestly, it may be a trend, but
But it looks
it's-
better.
But it looks better.
It just looks
It
better.
looks good.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
It
it's-
exaggerates keyframes really well, which is like what sells animation.
Yeah, it's good animation style. It's pops. It makes it give its own like feel.
Like I said,
Yeah.
it feels textured.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so like even if it is a trend or not, I don't mind.
Yeah. So I will. Do you want to say one last thing? real
Literally
quick?
just like one sentence.
Okay,
I
okay, I'm
love
sorry.
so much how Bebop and Rocksteady look.
Yeah, for that one little frame.
Yeah, they were only in one frame, but I paused on that and I looked at like what they actually like look like, and I love their proportions, and I love how like long I think it's Rocksteady's like snout is, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I don't know how to transition this very well, but I will say right now, number 2 is going to be really interesting because of the fact that we get to talk about Creed 3, or I guess I get to because I saw it, unlike these other people. But here's what I'll say is Creed 3. So I saw it in a Dolby Atmos theater, and I think it was maybe early or it was Friday night, doesn't matter. But after watching the movie and knowing that Michael B. Jordan was behind the camera on this one, I can tell you a couple of things right off the bat. Number one, this dude as director is a creative beast. I think what he said in interviews about how he has anime influences like Dragon Ball Z and Naruto. I'm not a big anime guy, but the final fight, without any spoilers, is an anime fight to a T. And I love that because I wish I could tell you like the visual stuff in it, but they really tried their best to make Adonis and the character of Damien, who's played by Jonathan Majors, as equals. And how they do that visually is incredible. And speaking on the visual storytelling thing, a lot of the movie doesn't rely on dialogue to move the movie forward. There is a lot of scenes that work because of its emotional impact, and even as its own movie, it's very strong from beginning to end. I'm not going to name anything, in particular of like what I think should have done a little bit better as a movie from beginning to end. Starts with Ant-Man, but I just think that with this movie, for it being a sports movie, for it being the biggest one yet, it's the first one that's ever shot in IMAX. For the fact that for most of the movie, it's actually not boxing. A lot of it is about the characters. It's a very character-driven film. I think that Michael B. Jordan gives an incredible performance. I think Jonathan Majors is continuing to be incredible in it, or incredible in his career, because of how much range he has. And I think this is honestly the best character he's ever played in his career, topping over like Kang and stuff like that. Tessa Thompson gets a lot more to do, and Felicia
She's in it?
Rashad. Tessa Thompson plays.
I didn't know she was in it.
Yeah,
she's in all 3 of them.
Yeah, she plays
that's
Michael
probably
B. Jordan's wife
probably
in the
why I
last
don't
two.
know.
Yeah.
And what I mean also with the whole like beginning to end thing is that like in every Rocky movie, it's a beginning to end story. You see him in a different foundation, and I think with this one in particular, you get to see Creed in a very, very similar light, like Michael B. Jordan in real life, which I think kind of puts it into reality. They even have people like Stephen A. Smith and people from UFC to kind of show up, and how they tie in with Creed 2 with Drago and all that stuff is really cool. So yeah, without giving anything away, I won't put it like a big rating. I'll give it like a 9 out of 10 or something like that. But honestly, I think the movie's incredible. So if you haven't seen it already, go ahead and watch it. I give it a big recommendation. And with that being said, I will transition into kind of one of our biggest topics, which is the Oscars. Oscars 2023. I don't know specifically what we want to talk about, but I know what I specifically wish was in there.
Yeah.
But I know you named off some like Best Picture stuff, but don't name it again yet because it's a lot.
Right.
But I remember you said something about like Nope and the Batman.
I don't know if I think that the Batman should have been nominated. I mean, maybe Paul Dano should have been nominated. I just love Paul Dano in general now, especially after watching There Will Be Blood. But and he got snubbed out of that one too, which is crazy to me.
Yeah.
It is absurd to me that he did not get nominated.
Yeah.
Because he put his whole back into that. But yeah, no, I think Nope not getting anything is, of course, par for the course because it's a horror movie or whatever. But I think that's such a weak excuse.
Yeah.
I think that there's no reason for it to not get recognized for its phenomenal screenplay and all of its great performances. It's a really big disappointment in that sense. I mean, I'm glad that Everything Everywhere is getting acknowledged.
Yeah.
I hope that Stephanie Sue. I hope that's how you say it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Stephanie Sue. Mhm.
Yeah, Stephanie
Just
Sue.
silent,
I really hope that she gets supporting actress.
I have some thoughts about that. I'll say right now, I don't think she'll get it because she just got her first award like 2 days ago.
That's true.
And also Angela Bassett has been sweeping. So there's that.
I think it's also just the fact that she's up against her own movie too. She's up against Jamie Lee Curtis in her own movie, and like Jamie Lee Curtis, I think Stephanie Sue's performance was better in Everything Everywhere. Like,
Yeah.
obviously, just because like of her. If you've seen the movie, you know.
Yeah.
But also Jamie Lee Curtis.
Curtis.
What did I just
Lee
say?
Curtis, the woman from Halloween.
Jamie Lee Curtis.
Don't call her the woman from Hollywood.
I
Put some
know.
respect on your name.
But the woman from Knives Out.
Yeah, sure. From
but
Freaky Friday. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, she's an industry like veteran. She's I don't know if she's been nominated before. I don't think
She has to.
No,
have
but this
Really?
works clearly for her rest of her filmography.
But yeah, and so like I feel like if she has a better chance of winning, if she does win, it'll be like a
also
Leonardo
be happy with
DiCaprio
that.
in The Revenant kind of a way.
I'd be
Kinda
happy
like-
for that outcome.
Yeah.
She was definitely I loved the whole movie, but she was one of my favorite aspects
Yeah.
of it.
Yeah.
And so I think that I'll be happy if any of the three that we talked about, if Stephanie Sue, Angela Bassett, or Jamie. Wait, no, Angela Bassett is she supporting?
She is supporting actress, yeah.
Yeah, but if any of them win, I'll be happy because they were all incredible in their respective movies.
Yeah, and there's also something I wish would get nominated, the Batman for Best Cinematography, because I feel like that was very dumb. Now,
No, it was a good movie.
I do want to
good-looking
talk
movie.
about what you just mentioned and what I think we're all thinking. I feel like the bias between certain genres is very weird.
Yeah.
Because I understand that they want to highlight certain movies. That's also the thing about Academy Awards that not a lot of people understand is that they're there to highlight movies that people haven't seen. There's a reason for that. Like with Paul Mescal being nominated for Aftersun, Cate Blanchett for Tar, and Todd Field being nominated for Best Director. I think that there are specific films that are specific indies or something like that, but also Avatar is kind of a no-brainer. And I feel like with no-brainers, I'm like the Batman with Best Score, Best Cinematography. You could argue about actor and actress. I think Paul Dano is a good choice, but with Robert Pattinson, the movie's about him, but he doesn't speak too much, but he acts with his eyes.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's harder to do as an actor than screaming and crying all the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You can just, I
I don't know if Robert Pattinson will end up in like those best acting compilations on YouTube.
no, he won't, because he don't say that much.
But it's still great.
Yeah,
and,
no.
and arguably more impressive than that.
Yeah, and he is, I mean, for a character that's gone for, I don't know how many years now, it's been played by different people and really great actors, too. It's
Yeah.
not just been
Yeah.
flukes.
Christian Bale.
Yeah, Christian Bale, Michael Keaton, unfortunate with Val Kilmer and George Clooney. They've been great in other things. But, and Ben Affleck's, a great director, and, he was just directed by Zack Snyder. That was the issue. But my thing about Robert Pattinson and even like The Batman as a movie is that it's a 3-hour film. It's an epic. It is a movie that's never been done before in the superhero genre, and it's harps on stuff like Fincher and like Scorsese a little bit with the gangster stuff. They're even adapting it to a show and stuff. But with it as like a Oscars like contender, I think it's very strong with directing. I don't
Yeah.
know why Matt Reeves is not nominated. He
Yeah,
is the
like-
reason why the movie's pacing is so well.
Yeah.
And every detail, it's a very detailed movie, down to seeing certain objects and it coming back in a very satisfying way. So.
But like Steven Spielberg's probably going to win for Fablemans, you know? like
Yeah, no, I think that's also a no-brainer. Although I'd be surprised if he didn't. I personally,
like Fablemans was great, but like
Fable was incredible. I think everybody should watch it. Honestly, I think if you love movies but also want to know more about Spielberg as a person,
Yeah.
that's I think honestly the latter more than what I just said.
I think that it's a lot of people, because kind of the impression I had going into it is that like a lot of people will it kind of has this impression of it's a movie of like one of those, you know, Oscar bait movies about like, wow, the joy of creating cinema is so great,
Of
you
rolling a
guys.
camera,
you know?
yeah.
But,
Putting
like-
light on the
And like there's
camera,
some
yeah.
elements of that.
But it's
like,
also about how like depressing it is
Yeah.
to like process your entire emotional worldview through film and like
Right.
through creation like that.
Yeah.
Um,
And also just navigating through the life as like a Jewish family as well.
Yeah.
We talk
Yeah.
onto that. And I
yeah,
feel
like pretty explicitly too.
Yeah, because this is a movie he had to hold on to for his entire life. So that's probably the main, also another reason for it. But also,
with his fake girlfriend.
Okay, all right, yes,
I think it was a necessary plot point.
it was necessary
It was
for
necessary.
for a pseudo biography. But I think with, I guess what I would put in, I think that's what I've been saying the entire time. Is like, what would I do? But I'm not the Academy. But for me personally, I know, it's surprising, is that James Cameron. I mean, the entire movie's fake.
Yeah, that is true.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's
he
like
literally said that there's only 5 shots.
that are like
5 frames, I think, that weren't CGI.
and
Yeah.
it looks like a real movie.
Yeah, and it's
From
almost
a technical level, that's really
it's
impressive. Yeah.
3 hours and 15 minutes of blue people, and you start to care about everybody. There's a lot of characters that are being introduced. Plus, through 1/3 of the movie, you're not even in the water place
Yeah.
yet, and that's incredible for a sequel to do that because it
Yeah.
actually feels like they're introducing the audience to the world again instead of just like cramming in information. And plus, also, the story is very emotional. It prioritizes the message of family. I know that's very generic for some people, but I feel like how they incorporate it in this kind of like fantastical world, and also talking about it in this very spiritual kind of like pseudo Native American route, which is I think is hilarious and kind of impressive as well. That like this 70-year-old, 80-year-old white guy is in charge of this whole new tribe with this new language. But hey, look, I'm not against it. I feel like for me, when it comes to like directing, that's very impressive.
Yeah.
And I will also bounce off of what you said about Nope, because even though I don't think it's my favorite Jordan Peele movie, I think it's very weird that the Academy chose to highlight Get Out instead of Nope when even Nope was talking about African Americans in the film industry. And I know that
I think it's because it was talking, arguably.
Well,
it was because
there's
it was
that,
talking
but also
about
I feel like-
African-Americans in the film industry.
yeah, because like once upon a time in Hollywood, they talked about other things instead of Hollywood, and they kind of went around it. But I feel like with Get Out, why was that the only horror movie in existence to be the exception, unless it wasn't to be not canceled? You know,
Yeah.
I don't want to tiptoe into very like controversial things, but I feel like personally, I feel like Nope, number one, highlights other things than the Hollywood industry, like about animals and how you
Yeah.
know.
It's very critical.
It is very
of
critical, but
Hollywood.
also it's very creative. It is
Yeah.
a Spielberg film in disguise, and that I feel like
Yeah.
is very interesting because it's never been done before in a horror movie.
It takes on a very pulpy tone at the end.
Yeah,
It's very much like it felt almost like a spiritual remake of Jaws.
It's this generation's Jaws, and
Yeah.
I feel like that's a big testament to the creativity and the tight directing and the great acting. I mean, for me personally, I love Keke Palmer's performance out of the most, but people said Daniel Kaluuya, once again, a very subtle performance. But sometimes Oscars don't really do that. You know, they don't. They like the acting compilation kind of people.
Yeah.
They like Daniel Day-Lewis.
He didn't win that year, though. To be fair, for There Will Be
Yeah.
Blood, he didn't win.
He was nominated.
Yeah.
Of course, he was nominated, but
Exactly.
he should have been, but he
Yeah.
didn't win.
So
Forrest Whitaker actually won that year. I looked this up.
that is true.
Yeah.
Now
Haven't seen the movie that it was for though. So
I guess I want to transition a little bit further,
Yeah.
but I guess I'll say one more thing. It's coming out this weekend. Tune in as fast as you can whenever it comes out. But also, Oscars, I'm talking to you from Evan to you. Can we not make a slap joke, please and thank you? Can we be professional? Anyway, transitioning.
Also, Everything Everywhere Better Win. Everything Everywhere Better Win. Best Picture.
It's going to win. Also, Ki Hugh Kwan is going to win anyway. So, transitioning into our final topic, is the movie that got picked.
There Will Be Blood.
Yes, exactly. PTA.
There Will Be Blood.
And There Will Be Blood. That's what we're talking
By
about.
Paul Thomas Anderson.
And I feel like, is it okay if I start with Thomas real quick?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
Okay,
yeah.
so Thomas, this is your first time seeing it, right?
Yeah.
This is also my
I've-
first time
I've-
seeing it. By
Oh,
the way.
sorry.
Yeah. No.
Well, you go ahead.
I know I was talking about before we started the episode that I haven't really seen a lot of like movies, so this is kind of my role in the show as I watch it for the first time.
Sure.
And this was also, interestingly enough, my first Paul Thomas Anderson movie, which
I want to say it was
He-
also mine.
he
my
lives
first
up
one,
to
too.
it. I think he lives up to the hype. It's very, very well directed. It's very, very well
Yes.
directed, and it's very, very well acted. Those two aspects, I think, are like pretty much perfect. Like, and I thought those two things are great. Daniel Day-Lewis is great. Paul Dano is incredible.
Yes.
Especially since he plays two characters, which I did not pick up on at first because they
Yes.
have like two separate things. And honestly, I wasn't not fully paying attention the first like 10 minutes.
That's,
So,
okay. Yeah.
but
I mean,
It's honestly a pretty dense first 10 minutes.
yeah.
yeah, that's
But
true.
but it was so interesting to me that the Daniel Day-Lewis's character was like he's supposed to be like this silver-tongued type of like oil baron of like you know, you're not really not supposed to root for him at all, but like in the first like hour or so you kind of do. Like
Yeah,
like
exactly.
you're kind of on his side a little bit, but then like workers start dying and
Yes.
and he
Son
sends
goes
his
deaf.
and his son goes deaf, and he sends that son off to boarding school because he doesn't want to deal with that. Then he escalates until in the ending he kills Paul Dano with a bowling ball. So,
Yeah. Oh, bowling
Bowling
pin.
pin.
bowling-
Yeah,
bowling
exactly.
pin. Yeah.
So-
But those two parts are great.
Yeah.
The writing is still pretty good. I think it's kind of
Goofy.
It's also a bit dense, you know. And on that note, I do have to say that I did abandon my child, and I did abandon my child, and I abandoned my boy.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
like that scene was a bit too goofy for me to take. Like Daniel Day-Lewis's performance is great in it, but it's such a goofy scene in like that specific part.
Yeah.
And the other thing I did kind of wanted to note was that the score was kind of distracting at times. It was really good in some places. But like in other places, it felt like it was kind of trying too hard a little bit. Like what scene was it that I was thinking of? Like there's just like a scene where he's just like sitting in his office, just like writing, and then like the scores are going like full violin of like do 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 do. Like it's like
It's
and
very
the same,
overbearing.
it's the same kind of score that would be happening when a worker is getting impaled by a spike, kind of a thing.
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
But yeah,
Sorry.
anyway.
It's a weird transition.
I was actually going to say that I think the score was the first thing that I noticed as being like really like fundamental to what I thought was good about the movie, because the very first shot there's just this like droning violin, and it very much reminds me of like the Shining.
Like
where
that's
there-
good. Yeah, that's a
where-
good use of it.
Where there's just like this. Well, and I think what it does is it like the music in general, it mirrors the pace of like the industrialization. In the beginning, you only hear like a singular violin, and there's just kind of this droning, like malignant, like air to it, and you just kind of it feels like there's like a ghost in the room, and it feels like I feel like that's relevant given how much of the movie is about like the idea of like possession. I mean, and like Paul Dano's character being like a, mega church pastor or whatever, that like frees people of their demons or whatever.
Yeah.
But like that aspect of the movie is the conflict between religion and profit, and like I think the movie is very heavy-handed, but I also don't think that's a bad thing. A lot of my favorite things are very heavy-handed, like the visual metaphor of. Another thing that I really loved about this movie is the visual storytelling.
Yes.
In the very beginning, there's a part where Daniel Day-Lewis's character is separated in the frame by this piece of machinery, and there's a rope being lowered down into the well,
Yes.
and it has a little. It obviously has something that is a different fixture for a different knot for something else, but it looks like a noose.
Yeah.
And it's being
Yes.
lowered into the ground.
Love it.
and it's like representative of the deaths of the men that he has to hire, and the literal earth that he's killing in order to get his profits.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That title's really interesting. There Will Be Blood.
Yeah.
It's like I liked it because it's one of those titles that is very, very metaphorical until it isn't at the very end.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
But-
Also, like my reference for, I guess, this movie is that number one, I didn't rewatch it because I remember most of it, but also I've seen other PTA movies. PTA's style is very 70s, 80s, 60s. He likes this kind of era, like Boogie Nights and Licorice Pizza, which I have not seen because of controversy. But for this movie in particular, I think this is definitely his best because it's the most out of his element, and you can tell he's experimenting with different things, especially with production design and how it's in this very like barren area. Also, I feel like with what you said about the visual storytelling, I think that there's a lot of these very kind of loud shots. That's like the best way I can say it, with like that incredible shot where you see the fire come out of the oil barrel. It's an incredible just set, just in general, and just him covering in oil and stuff like that. It is a very heavy-handed movie.
Yeah, it's like,
and
it looks like the fires of hell.
yeah, and it works for it. You know what I mean? There's certain movies that get very heavy-handed, and you can tell that it is. You know what I mean? It feels like they're talking at you instead of talking with you about it. And to highlight the performances, Paul Dano, incredible. Also, very hateable character. And that's been
Both of them, really.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
and
they're both the worst.
very
in their own
greedy.
ways.
They don't believe in what they're talking about, and you see how he's basically manipulative, and also about how Daniel Day-Lewis's character is going nuts because there's part of it where it's like you kind of understand why he's going nuts. But then there's like scenes where he's calling his kid like a bastard in a basket. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where it's like, oh my gosh, you know what I mean? Like, why would you say that? And there's a lot of these very intense scenes. There's these scenes that kind of are very conflicting. That's the best way. That's the word I can use. Where it's just like, oh my God, that sucks. But you're in this time period. You're not in this era, and there's a lot of stuff going at you, and people are asking you of everything. And for the entire runtime, I was hooked the entire time. And Daniel Day-Lewis's accent is incredible. It should be in the Hall of Fame. I don't care.
He
the
does
Monopoly accent works for me.
He does such a good like evil old white guy. Like he's so
Yes.
good at that.
Exactly.
There will be blood. I'm going to. It's just turning into like Statler and Wardoff for me, but because I can't do it anymore. But I was able to. But it is a fun accent, and I think it works because it is kind of it's something that could have been very overbearing very quickly if it wasn't done right. And I think that the fact that it isn't overbearing and the fact that it works for it is great, since he's playing such a dramatic character. Because if you've got like Daniel Craig doing Benoit Blanc's voice, it's goofy on purpose.
Yeah, it's on
because
purpose.
he's a goofy
'Cause
character.
that's what Ryan Johnson's
But-
asking for.
Yeah, because he's supposed to be kind of silly.
Yeah,
But like with this, they could have gone down that route with this, and it wouldn't have worked. And it was very close to, but I think that something about how Daniel Day-Lewis did it was that it really did work, and you just believed that it was his actual voice. I think was in the way he acted in it.
Yes. So, Keimani, I'm going to limit you to one sentence or just
Yeah.
like some other things.
Yeah.
And then we could talk about, honestly, you know what? Yeah, you say your thing, and then we can say it in like one word.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say that I think it's funny that you talked about how the movie made you feel conflicted or made you like root for him, because I think this was one of those. This was to me one of those things where it's like, it's not like we're not gonna watch a middle-aged white guy be evil and be like, well, I kind of feel for him. You know what I mean? Like it's
He's
and
relatable, you know?
In some of those in like shows and movies that are like that are some of my favorite ever. So I mean, it's not like I'm knocking that genre, but it's very funny how just blatantly evil he was.
Yeah.
Like in one of the first scenes, like in the first 15 minutes, it like I said, that scene where the rope's being lowered into the ground.
Yeah.
A dude dies, and then he adopts that guy's son and takes it on his own, even though he's basically responsible for that guy's death, and then tries to immediately feed the baby alcohol in order to get him to stop drinking or to get him to stop crying. And I think obviously alcohol is a really great motif throughout the film. But yeah, no, just in general, he was just such a comedically despicable character, and I didn't like him for a second, but at the same time, I didn't think like I need to turn this off either.
Yeah.
You're just kind of wanting him to experience consequence, and then he doesn't, and then the movie ends.
Yeah, it's kind of like the thing of the silver tongue, you know. It's like he he doesn't make you root for him in that like you're like, oh, I feel bad for him, like I want him to succeed, like he's so relatable.
You want to see how far
But
he can go.
You gotta see how far he can go, and also in like the first, like say like 20 minutes, half hour or so, he's very good at like. He's smooth talking the villagers and stuff, and it's very easy to get caught up in that as an audience member because he's also kind of talking to you.
Yeah.
So, but then he starts, like I said, people start dying. So.
Okay, so all right, I guess what I'm going to say is that I'm harkening back to the first episode where we used to do it like one word or something like that.
Yeah.
So, Thomas, one word, there will be blood.
Child.
Okay, Keimani, one word.
Can you pick your one word first?
Intense.
Oh, droning.
Sure.
Actually, machinery. I would say machinery.
All right,
good
good one. Okay, so.
Oh, the favorite part of the episode.
Popcorn bucket time. I'm not going to look into it, but I'll close my eyes. I really hope it's not that one movie Carter picked, but we're just going to trust the system. So, says right here, from Brooke, Promising Young Woman 2020, directed by Emerald
2020?
Fennell.
Haven't seen it.
Never seen it either.
Haven't seen
I don't think this is going to be interesting. So, Promising Young Woman is the movie that we are going to be watching in the next episode. And hopefully in the next episode, we'll maybe talk about some movies like Scream or Shazam, or maybe some other stuff that might happen, maybe the Oscars results. But, you know.
The next event.
Yeah, we'll see. So, that's all for now for What the Movie, and we will see you guys next time.
Snowbound Sound.